I'm saying. So, of course, I didn't memorize it, so I'll read off the paper. So, apologize. But here we go. Silence. Only silence and darkness so deep. Fathoms upon fathoms of murky black depths that I couldn't even discern, and still, even more, silence. But what was before the silence? Before the black, the deep, and the unknown. In the 10th month, there was an acquaintance, a cute smile, a pretty face, and a fantasy that's like lust, not yet love, something still worth consideration, and with patience, maybe, just maybe, something more. In the 12th month, there was flirtation, a few outings, text messages, cute pictures, all despite her situation being a bit more than complicated. You see, this was a differential equation that I aimed to solve with neglecting the boundaries. Like a free beam, our communication had no stress on either end, so I assumed that I was doing the right thing. A good engineer, solving a problem, all the while neglecting, and she already had an initial condition. Mm-hmm. On the 16th day, we spent the night together, tussling like Vikings. We played and laughed through the night, and all the while hosting lofty ideals and happiness in situations and set up if-then statements to justify fun that it caused no harm. But at midnight, it was my birthday, 17th day, and I was now 22. And in one particularly long sequence of chess-like wrestling moves, my lips brushed hers. Sparks flying would have been an understatement because I had just discovered nuclear fusion. And shit got real. You may laugh, but all I can describe was a blinding prominence, the utter apex of ecstasy, and before I knew it, windswept and caught in a fit of wanderlust, we had arrived at the bed. My bed. Together. And while we may not have had sex in the strictest sense of the term, we bent and wrote damn near every rule kind of approach it. Like a limit that approaches but never quite reaches zero, like tightrope walkers straddling a fine line over a gaping chasm, except we both yearned. Our bodies cried out, screamed to fall into the abyss. A few weeks later, we finally took the plunge, and the plunge was an understatement because what may have only been a few minutes felt like hours, close-knit, sweaty, deep inhales only to find yourself short of breath, and then the release. And when at the resolution her eyes met mine, my mind stopped. A man who formerly was constructed on a myriad of thoughts, calculations, permutations, premises, and conjecture could no longer harness a single thought. I could no more wield a single logical thought than I could bear to move away from her. All there was silence, interrupted by the rhythmic merrymaking of our heartbeats. Silence and us. On the 14th day, I made her a stuffed monkey from scratch, and yeah, I know it's possibly overkill, but you should have seen me at work. I mean, I spent hours, and although it still didn't come out the way I intended, the smile she showed me when she received it made every hour of research and effort and work worth it. It was all worth it. In fact, I would have done it again. All she had to do was ask. On the 5th day, we claimed that to be our day, our anniversary. After months now together with her initial condition now set to 0, it seemed that I could finally be the solution to the system of equations, the intersection between line and plane, passion and purpose. I had no doubt that this was what was supposed to be. I was no longer thinking. I was acting. Being. It was one of the best and most free emotions I had ever experienced. No doubt, no double checking, only the absolutes and the assurance that our affection had been affirmed and addressed in full. On the 16th day, I surprised her for her birthday. Better put, I developed a weekend of surprises for her birthday. Sleepovers, cookie cake, hair, nails, whatever to make her feel special on her own day. I didn't need a thank you. I just needed her to feel happy beyond measure. I wanted her to be a singularity on her day, the one place in the multiverse where entropy no longer increased, where the chaos of her family life, financial issues, and drama could no longer touch her, no longer harm her, no longer mar her beautiful smile. On the 28th day, I left the country. But despite global education, she still stayed the center focus of my mind. Late-night Skype sessions and daily email became my homework assignments, and flowers delivered to her job were lab reports, and dresses and other pieces of French fashion were take-home tests. In the 7th month, I returned. We played, but we fought, and we changed. What first required no thought required the strategy of a world-class chess player. Love had been tainted by war, and although we were both too close to see the difference, and while the kitchen got hotter, we just burned. Nerves gone, flesh raw, 3rd degree. We never felt the pain. We just relished in the highs and agreed to move past and never mention the lows. In the 9th month, she returned. She took a trip. While the ticket said Florida, it might as well said the Sea of Tranquility. For while she came back at peace with herself, the world, and us, I barely heard from her. Feeling she was estranged in some lunar landscape in which was now assured, was now riddled with doubt. At 2 p.m., I held her. I think it was a Wednesday. It was cold outside. We lay on my extra long twin bed on 2 opposite ends until she finally came to me. Naturally, we spooned. But I couldn't help but notice this gap between us. And it must not have been more than 2 inches, but it may as well have been an utter chasm that I had fallen into. So I asked the question, the one I had been dying to ask the entire time: are you happy with me? With us? With where we are? And after a pause that felt like if eternity had begun and ended, she began to shudder and cry. And before I knew it, even I was on the verge of tears. And she said, "Marlon, I love you. But I'm not in love with you anymore." She had found herself and lost her emotions, had lost her passion, and all that was left behind was me. And while I comforted her on the outside, on the inside, a raw, festering wound had been opened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hurt someone, and I wanted to fight back, but how can you fight against growth? Fight against change, faith, defy destiny. And so, after fighting against it and trying to be friends to no avail, and trying to forcibly fit square pegs in round holes, I finally embraced it. All that was left was the silence and the black. The deep, dark black. The understanding that this was over for good and there would never be another time for us. Embrace that I may have given too much and now I struggle to give away even a little of what I had to the world. Silence. Only silence, before interrupted with the rhythmic intonation of our percussive heartbeats, is now simply silence and me. And now some part of me sits in the cold, dark, and huddled in its silence. The dark, waiting and watching to venture out into the bright lights of love again. But until then, there's silence. I asked earlier what came before the silence. Well, I guess it was a trick question because just like differentiating exponential, you almost always get the same thing again times a constant. You just get what you had at the beginning. Silence and me. But this was me. Me times growth. Growth at an exponential rate. And so I sit in silence, waiting, watching for my turn. Is it my time again?
Ooh.